Alright, so for this video, I'm gonna do YNW Melly's lower. She goes by the name of Raven Liberty, and I'm not gonna lie, like she was going viral all over Twitter for whatever reason. Obviously, you could probably see right there, and I just wanted to see if she's worth the hype, if she's really that attractive, and yeah, let's see what her facial rating is. So her overall facial rating is a 5.75. That is 1 in 3.69 people. The percentage of people is around the top 27% of people, so that's the top 27 percentile. The side facial score is at 63%. The front facial score is at 64%. Her total facial harmony is at 63%. Her facial dimorphism, so how feminized is her face, is a 3. Her body fat factors is a 6. Her miscellaneous features is a 7.5. And then we got the tier list to the right side: tier 1 ideal, tier 2 near ideal, tier 3 normal, tier 4 slight flaw, tier 5 flaw, tier 6 huge flaw, tier 7 breaks harmony. Alright, so this is the overall facial assessment breakdown. These are the major things that I've noticed in her face that are flaws or that are just overall just negative. So her lack of overall youthfulness to the face includes loose skin, which is the hyoid, underneath the jaw, eye bags and dark circles around the eye area, and underneath that is a prominent nasolabial fold. The nose is probably the worst feature in her side view profile. The nose is not upturned enough and can be classified as a nose that is not feminized, because women tend to have noses that are more upturned on average. Alright, so these are the rarity scores of other celebrities, so y'all can compare. So let's start off with the eye separation ratio. So it goes from the pupil distance relative to the distance of her cheekbones, and hers is at 47%, so that is ideal. Her facial third, so you want to have even thirds from upper, middle, and lower thirds. Preferably, you want to have a larger middle third because it's more feminizing, which she does at 34%, and this doesn't stray away from 33%, so her thirds are perfect. Her canthal tilt is literally 0, so she doesn't have a tilt at all, so this will be a slight flaw, especially for a female, because females tend to have more upturned eyes. Her facial width to height ratio, FWHR, so how compact is her facial features in her face, and that is a tier 1 at 1.96, so that is not bad. Her jaw frontal angle is an 89 degrees, so she does have a pretty wide jaw for her face, and this is not bad at all. This is within the middle of the distribution. Her cheekbone height steadiness, so you want to have high cheekbones and makes your face look more youthful. Her cheekbones are not really high. It's closer to medium to lower set cheekbones, so this is going to be within the normal range. Her bigonial width is a 96%, so how wide is her jaw? And her jaw is a little bit on the wider side. This is still normal within reason, but it's not really the type of jaw that you want. It's gonna make your face look a little bit more bloated than what it really is. That's what wider jaws usually tend to do. But yeah. And also women tend to have more of a less wider jaw, so the fact that she has a wider jaw is not really that good. Her total facial height to width ratio is a tier 3, so how long is her face compared to how wide is her face at 1.41. And women tend to have more shorter faces, more smaller heads, and her head is on the longer side. I think it's because of her forehead. She does have a pretty long forehead for a female, and this will be a tier 3. Her chin to fill trim ratio is a tier 1 at 2.22, so she does have a pretty good fill trim relative to her chin. And this goes from the subnasal down to the top of the upper lip, and it compares it down to the chin, and the chin region is long enough for that region, or for the fill trim I should say. Her neck to width ratio is a tier 1, so she does have a pretty wide neck for her face, but not too wide to where it's out of the ideal range. Her mouth to nose width ratio, now when I first saw her face, I literally thought that her nose is a little bit too wide for her face. I'm not gonna lie, but now if it's relative to her eyes, which it can be, yes, her nose is wide for her face, but this is relative to the mouth region. So yes, her nose does harmonize well with her mouth because her mouth is that much wider. And it does look like she got lip fillers or whatnot, but whatever, that's besides the point. And yeah, so her nose, it harmonizes well with her mouth. It doesn't harmonize well with her eyes, obviously. For the lips too, it does not harmonize with the eyes, but preferably you do want your nose to harmonize with your eyes, and you do want your mouth to harmonize with your eyes as well. The mouth width should be within the iris of the eye, the inner iris of the eyes, and for her mouth passes the iris of the eyes, and it goes towards actually the outside of the iris. So yeah, but nevertheless, she does pass that measurement. Her mid-face ratio is a tier 4, and that is 1.17. So her mid-face is a little bit more on the compact side, and that is due to because her mid-face is just a little bit more shorter, and she does have a very short field trim as well. Her eyebrow settiness is a tier 4 again, so that's not good, and is at 1.9. So she does have eyebrows that are very high set relative to her face, and females tend to have higher set eyebrows, but it has to be within reason. You don't want to have eyebrows that are too high set for your face. It's going to break harmony. Her eye spacing, one eye's width apart, and hers is at 92%, so that gave that a tier 2. So that's very close to the ideal range. You want it to be almost exactly at one eye width apart. That's preferable. Her eye aspect ratio is a tier 2 at 3.5, and this means that her eyes is a little bit on the narrower side, and for women, you tend to have you tend to want to have more rounder shaped eyes. That's just more of a feminine quality. Her lower lip to upper lip ratio is a tier 2 at 1.37, and this is very close to the ideal range. If her upper lip was a little bit more longer, this would have been at that ideal range, but this is not too bad. Her deviation from her ipsilateral aliar angle and her jaw frontal angle is a tier 2, and you do not want this to deviate more than 15 degrees. Hers only deviates at 10 degrees, so this is not too bad. This is close to the ideal range, but preferably you want your mid-face angle and your jaw angle to be parallel to each other or the same, and you do not want it to deviate more than 5 degrees, preferably. Her eyebrow tilt is a tier 2 at 7.5. Now this is not too bad. This is close to the ideal range, but you want to be at least bare minimum, at least for a female, around 10 degrees. If you can't get around 10 degrees of an eyebrow tilt, then you're not going to get the full points. And preferably, women usually have more tilted eyes, it's just more feminine. Her bitemporal width is a tier 1 at 88%, and this is good. So she does have a pretty good forehead region, and this harmonizes well with her cheekbone area. Her lower third proportions is 38%, and 38% is a little bit outside of the ideal range. You don't want it to deviate more than 3% away from 33%. So 36 is the highest end of it. She does deviate a little bit away from that, but still this is not too bad, like I said again. And her ipsilateral aliar angle for the last one is a tier 2 at 99 degrees, and she does have wide set eyes, and yeah. So let's talk about the gonial angles. From the side view profile, her gonial angle is pretty sharp at 122. This is at the medium end of it because women tend to have more wider gonial angles than men. Men tend to have sharper gonial angles than women. But nevertheless, this is pretty good. Her nasofrontal angle, so it goes from the nasal bridge all the way to the brow region, and it determines if you have a protrusive brow area, and hers is at 143. Now this is way too obtuse. The angle is way too obtuse, and this is beyond not having a brow. So she doesn't have a brow at all, and 143 is way outside of the ideal range. It's still normal within reason, but it's outside of that ideal range that you want to be in. If she had at least 137, that would have been perfect. Her mandibular plane angle, so how down swung is her jaw, and hers is at 20 degrees, and this is not too bad. Her jaw is down swung, but it's down swung. So since her her mandible is down swung within reason, this is perfect and is in the ideal range. Her ramus to mandible ratio, so how long is your ramus relative to the length of your mandible, and hers is at 57%. Now if she was a little bit closer to 59%, then she would have been within that ideal range, but she's near it, so it's not too bad. Women tend to have shorter ramiuses than men, but even though her ramius is a little bit tad short, she doesn't lose too much points for this. Her facial convexity going from the glabella, which is her brow region, is at 172 degrees. And 172 degrees means that she does have a not too rounded of a facial convexity, but not too flat. She's in the middle of the distribution. So what this tells me is that she has a very good facial convexity, and some of her other measurements should be good, because if your facial convexity is too flat or too rounded, what that tells me is that it's going to break harmony for some other measurements. So yeah, and it's almost kind of like, think of it like a chain reaction too, especially with a big measurement like that. Her submental cervical angle, so like I said again, she has a lot of high hyoids, so that loose skin underneath the chin, and 144 is way outside of the range, so she does get deducted a lot of points, which is a tier 5, and that is not good. Her nasofacial angle, so this is the inner angle created from the nasal bridge down to the chin, and this doesn't take into account her facial convexity. And like I said again, y'all gonna see it too. She does not have any jaw recession, and she does have a prominent chin, and her nose is somewhat protrusive, so I can see why this angle is good and this measurement is ideal. Her nasolabial angle, like I said again, she does not have an upturned nose. Her nose is downswung, and a nose that is this downswung is going to be a tier 7, which is a complete flaw. And for a female, this is not feminized as well. Even for men, it's not even masculine. Like, this is just beyond no. So 59 is just way too low, and this is probably her biggest flaw, like I said again. Her orbital vector, now I'm gonna say this, I don't know how old this lady is, but I'm assuming that she's probably in her early 50s. I could be wrong, she could be in her late 40s, but a research that I saw from the NIH is that as you get older, your orbital vector starts to become positive. So what that means is that your eye, so your orbital rims, so the bone area underneath your eye becomes more projected out. So your eyes are actually getting sunken inside your skull even more. So what this tells me is that when she was younger, she probably had a negative orbital vector. Now that she's a little bit older, her orbital vector is neutral. And you can see it right here. This is the dark circle that I'm talking about. I know y'all guys can see it, and I'm glad I put it in black and white so it can make it easier to see. This is dark circles right over here, all this black stuff right here. And with this dark circle, what this tells me, and she's wearing makeup too, and the fact that you can see it tells me a lot. That's the effect of having a negative orbital vector for most of your life. Obviously, she has it neutral, but I'm telling you, when she was younger, she probably had a negative orbital vector. So her total facial convexity, so this is including the nasal protrusion, is 144, and this is within the middle of the distribution, and this is perfect. So she does have a good facial convexity. Like I said again, the facial convexity from the glabella tells me a lot about your face. Her mentolabial angle is a tier 3 at 98 degrees, and 98 degrees is still within normal range, but it's a little bit too acute of an angle. That means her chin itself is a little bit too protrusive. I don't think her lower lip is that protrusive relative to her upper lip, but her chin is just way too protrusive. Now, women tend to have more protrusive chins, but this protrusive of a chin is not ideal. Her facial convexity from the NASION, so this is going from the nasal bridge instead of the glabella, which is the brow ridge, and hers is 169 degrees, and 169 degrees is perfectly fine. And usually, the facial convexity from the NASION is 5 degrees less than when it's taken from the glabella. Her nasal projection, so how projected is her nose, and she does have good projection. Now, it might not seem like that because her nose is very droopy, but is at the lower end of the range, but it still is perfectly fine, especially for a female to have a nasal projection like this. Her nasal width to height projection, so pretty much this is the length of the nose, and a nose like this, so let me just break this down real quick. So this is the width of the nose, this is the length of the nose, and it goes all the way to the eye line, and is the width divided by the length. Now, she does have more length than width, and this is preferable for a female. And females usually have less width than the brow ridge, or yeah. So she does have a good amount of length to her nose, and this is within the ideal range. And yeah, so this is perfectly fine of a nasal protrusion. Now her Ricketts E line is a tier 2, so these are all lip measurements. I'm gonna just show you guys right here. Now her lip measurements were a bit tricky because she does have a protrusive chin, but she doesn't have a upturned nose. Now, if she did have an upturned nose, I think that all of these lip measurements would be within the ideal range. Now, this one is a tier 2 because her bottom lip damn near touches that line, or kind of close to it. It doesn't really touch it, but it's close to it, and her upper lip is the same as well. And preferably, you want your upper lip to be a little bit behind the line. Now, if her upper lip was a little bit behind the line, that would have been within the ideal range. Now, for this one right here, this is perfect. Your bottom lip is supposed to touch, so it goes from the upper lip down to the chin, and your bottom lip is supposed to touch. Now, for the S, so for the Steiner S line, it goes from the middle of the nose down to the chin. And what you want is you want your upper lip to be in line with the line, or barely touching that line. Now her bottom lip does touch the line, but her upper lip doesn't. So that would be a tier 3. And then for the burstal line, her upper lip passes that line, and her bottom lip barely passes that line. Now it should be around 3 to 2 or 3.5 millimeters to 2.2 millimeters, but I gave this a tier 1. So based off of this, it looks like her upper lip is just a little bit more protrusive than her lower lip. So if her upper lip was just less protrusive and her nose was a little bit more upturned, this would have been flawless. But her lip measurements are like 50-50 in my opinion. All right, so the next one is a nasal mental angle. It is a tier 1, and this is the relationship between the nose and the chin in relation to her facial convexity as well. Now, like I said again, she has very good facial convexity, so I expect this angle to be within the ideal range, but this is at the higher end of the ideal range, but this is still perfect. Her gonian to mouth relationship, so this measures to see if you have an adequate jaw for your face, because this is very pleasing from the side view profile. And this also is another representation to see if you have a long enough ramus for your mouth or for your face. And preferably you want your gonian, so the gonian bone, to undercut your mouth line, and hers undercuts her mouth line, so that is perfect. Her recession relative to the Frankfurt plan angle, so you do not want to have any jaw recession. Now, she does have a very protrusive chin, and she does have a long mandible, so I do expect her chin to pass the glabella region, and you want it to also pass the nasion. So if it passes the nasion, it's an automatic tier 1, but preferably you want it to also pass the glabella right here, and it passes both regions, so this is perfect. Her brow ridge inclination is at a 14 degrees. Now, it will kind of hard to see exactly where her brow ridge is. I really think it's more like 15 or 16 degrees, but even if her brow ridge is around 15 or 16 degrees, this would be perfect either way it goes. So she does have good forehead inclination. Now, this is the last angle, and this is the nasal tip angle at 122 degrees. So she does have a good nasal tip angle, and she does not have a very bulbous nose, all right, or a bulbous tip nose, I guess you could say. And yeah, so like I said again, she is a 5.75, and the reason why she's a 5.75, like I said again, due to age and due to the lack of feminine qualities, especially from the front and side region. And if she had a little bit more youthfulness, I really think that she would have been closer to her harmony score, which is a 63%, and that's a pretty good harmony score to have, 63%. But like I said again, due to the lack of feminine qualities and her the age, right, so it brought her score down a little bit lower than what it should be. Now, like I said again, if y'all want me to rate your face, I'm gonna have my email and my IG down in the description. Make sure to email me or DM me. I will accept anything, and I'll do it for free. I'll give you instructions, and within 24 to 48 hours, you should receive your facial analysis. And yeah.